But my name's Sheila Hagney. I'm the Safe and Together Lead Officer for 3 Ayrshire HSCPs, East, North and South. And I've been in post since September 2022 and funded by Delivering Equally Safe. So when I started my post back in 2022, I decided one of the first things that I needed to do was undertake some lived experience work and really get a sense of how women were experiencing services. And I was new to the area. I came from Ayrshire Council, so I didn't know a lot of people, and you can appreciate that 3 HSCPs that's a lot of people. So thankfully Women's Aid supported me to do this piece of work, and I suppose I want to acknowledge, because we know that they're so busy, they're so stretched, and actually taking this time out to do this bit of work with me to facilitate it, plus supporting the women who provided their contributions to this, like, that needs to be acknowledged. So it's the first thing I want to say. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I learned, just some stuff that you maybe don't want to do if you're taking forward some lived experience work yourself. So I'm going to be quite honest about what I've learned. So when I started post, it was made very clear to me by health visitors, social workers, other professionals, that they're not using the model. They've been trained, we've had COVID, all kinds of things, as you know, the impact of losing staff and lots of new staff, lots of challenges, and they're like, we've not had a minute of brain space to take this on. So I decided it obviously wouldn't be a hugely helpful activity to be asking women about what is your experience of, agencies, are they using Safe and Together models? So I decided to take it right back to basics and look at safety. What are agency responses to domestic abuse mean to a mother and child's feelings of safety and a mother and child's actual safety? So the very basics of, what as agencies we want to help, we want to support. And by the way, I come from children and family social work myself. So I really wanted to kind of drill into that and see, like, what was that impact? So I decided to do a survey, the most bland way you could go about getting this really crucial, important information. When Dr. Plant was talking before about her focus group, it kind of, it's a little dagger to my heart because I wasn't that brave to actually take forward a focus group. So I decided, because I'm attached to 3 HSCPs, that means there's a lot of social workers, a lot of health visitors, a lot of professionals. So we decided that I was going to do an anonymous survey. I would do like a little front letter saying who I was, what I was trying to do, and what the vision of the HSCPs were, and the fact that I've got children and families backgrounds and I know things need to change. That was like the most important thing. I know this has to happen. And the wonderful workers of Women's Aid took that forward in terms of speaking to women who they felt were ready to do the task and sit down and talk to them. So some of the examples, the problem when you're doing a survey like this, you're obviously asking for really personal, huge narratives. You can't do that in a survey. So anyway, but I have to say the information that I got back was hugely helpful. So examples of questions would be, what extent were your children's experiences and views gathered directly with your children? I was actually quite surprised that there was a little bit more of that than what I anticipated. And then a question about thinking about your feelings of safety, which statements describes how you felt when working with the above agencies. Now, just to give you a picture of the survey, the beginning bit was like marking off which agencies you worked with, any other ones. And the first thing that I realised is it's so complicated because agencies are coming and going, aren't they, in people's lives. And some women, I have to say, were amazing because they managed to encapsulate that on this survey and really paint a picture of what happened when. And obviously the design of our survey wasn't great, so actually it was really difficult to sort of work out who was doing what when. So did my survey do what I wanted it to do in terms of finding out about that safety? Not quite. However, the information that came from that, and there was a lot of spaces for people to add information and to tell me about other things that maybe I hadn't asked about. And that is where the real information came about, like the really, really important stuff. So the findings, Women's Aid were consistently rated positively in terms of helping women feel and be safe. So obviously in the back of your mind, you might think, well, no wonder they were facilitating that. That's going to encourage women to say, but we do know that obviously women's aid make a huge difference in women's lives. And it was making me think, like, if we took women's aid out of the picture and it was just left to all those other agencies to support women, it's actually a terrifying thought, like, if you just didn't have women's aid. Children and family social work, so there was actually a couple of positive experiences highlighted. And interestingly, those positive experiences came before the Safe and Together model came to that particular Ayrshire, which was fascinating. But I think 20 respondents altogether, that was two. There was another 18 there that had not great experiences, as we know, and no one's surprised to hear that. So when it came to sort of comments about agencies, the strongest negative comments were about children and family social work and police. And everyone, it was a bit of a mixed bag about, in relation to everybody else. I think none of us are surprised to hear that too many agencies are involved, which requires having to repeat accounts of abuse and traumatic experiences. I think we could guess that, but actually when you see it, like all the ticking the boxes, one woman had 11 different agencies at one time, not over a period of time, at one time between her and her child. And it was like, oh my God. And I've read enough social work assessments, and to be honest, I've been the person that's written those social work assessments about inconsistent accounts and like not engaging. You think, well, no wonder, like 11 age, 2 or 3 is enough, more than enough, so that was kind of quite illuminating. And women are not being respected as experts in their own situation. And again, this is obviously what I like most about the Safe and Together model. It's really highlighting that. How can we as agencies assess risk if we're not listening to the women about what her experiences are? We're not understanding what she's having to live with in terms of like patterns of behaviour. And one woman actually wrote in great big capital letters, I am the expert in my situation. And you could feel the anger coming off the page. And this is not a very accomplished survey as well. If you could actually get that feeling of like strong emotion off that page, you can get a sense of what people have been having to deal with. So interestingly, out of 20, no perpetrators were held to account in like anything. That was a question, pretty straightforward question. A little very much or not at all or something. I think that was the question. Nobody. One guy, because it was too soon in protest to hold him to account. So I thought, right, that's fine. And for another woman, he was arrested for downloaded images of children. So, and interesting, she's like, I've been trying to tell agencies about my experience of domestic abuse at his hands, and no one is believing me. But now you believe me. Now you're telling me he's not to have anything to do with my child. Now he's finally been arrested. It's like, I've been telling you this guy, it shouldn't be around my son this whole time. So very interesting. I think one of the biggest things, I can't actually believe I haven't put it as a point, but is we're not being believed. And the first thing when I'm looking through, it was such a heavy theme, like we're not being believed. And the first thing my brain did when I read that is, that can't be right. So literally, we're just, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that's literally the first thought that's come into my head. And actually, again, the drawbacks to my survey didn't really encourage people to say what that was about and what sort of context that they're not believed. But actually, when I did a separate piece of work in terms of case file auditing, I was like shocked by what I saw in terms of that not being believed. And so, I mean, we're actually saying to women, don't believe you. I'll do consultations with various different agencies from like health, education, social work, and I think she's over exaggerating. I think they're both as bad as each other. And I'm like, we do very blatantly not believe women. And certainly if there's like other issues such as like drug use or alcohol use, if there's like a really in your face issue, we'll be like, no, stop blaming the domestic abuse and take responsibility for your actions. Stop blaming him for causing trouble before that your child's appointment and get your child to your. And I was like, oh, the actual extent of not believing women was like really, really shocking to me. And I thought, you think you know what you're talking about, but actually when you see something like this, think, wow. So not too bad. So learning to practice. basically we've taken this and the voices and the comments and the experiences, and I do some sort of informal face-to-face work with women too. Women will approach me, social workers will set them up with me to talk about their experiences and stuff. So I've got a bit of a range of stuff going on now, which is really good. But actually we're using those voices, those experiences to just, you know, right through our various workshops. And I know that Moray have like their workshops. Ours tend to be focused on working with men, disentangling women and supporting women, not re-traumatizing the child and working. So we've kind of split our workshops into that sort of thing. And actually women's lived experience and the comments and the things that, you know, what we've learned are threaded through that. And that's actually been the most powerful bit, because people know I'm like, but actually when you say, this is what someone has written, this is what someone has told me, practitioners sit up and really do sit up and listen. And I do have to say, like, the word appetite's been used a few times today, which is fabulous, because it's there. It really is there, that people want to do something different. We've got like workshops. We're actually having to extend the time of our workshops from 2 hours to 3 hours, because people are loving them so much and getting that time out to do things a little bit differently. And we're drilling into, so they from the sort of safety aspects and action plans and into processes such as like MARAC, IRBs, what else? Child protection, wellbeing assessments, and actually making sure that we're elevating the women's voices in that at that table. You know, any plan, if a mum hasn't agreed it, you need to at least acknowledge that. And we were doing like MARAC training, MARAC reps overview training, and that was a big thing. Not, you might not always have mum's views, but whatever you put in, you need to acknowledge that she hasn't agreed to that, and there might be unintended consequences. And from this piece of work, we're able to highlight why that is the case. So it's been, despite, like, you know, if I was to give the exercise itself like a mark out of 10, I'd say 6. Anxiety, apprehension, overthinking it, 9 out of 10, and it didn't do me any favors in the activity. But actually still what we managed to get out of that was like huge. It was massive. So I'm working with a woman just now. She's her children are open to social work, historical domestic abuse, and I call her my critical friend. She's wonderful. And although I'd wrapped this bit of work up, I said, have a look at these questions and tell me what you think. And she did. And it's amazing, because I put so much thought into it, and I did look for like bits of advice and guidance, but it's amazing what you missed. And I actually did speak to a woman who had lived experience, but she worked within services. So you forget, like, you know, so I flung in the word intervention at some point, and I was like, I don't know how I missed it. So what does that mean? What you're talking about? Family, even when you use family, what does that mean? Are you talking about him being included in that? Are you not? The word offender, I didn't even think. She was like, my abuser. And I was like, right, okay, stop diluting it. And I was like, wow, in my sort of efforts to not try and upset people, I'm kind of upsetting people a little bit by not actually respecting what their experience is. So again, I suppose just what I've learned, like flexibility, sort of using technology, facing your apprehensions. Should have just done a focus group. Because what I feel like the drawback from doing that survey is I feel like I've really stunted people's opportunity to really properly tell their story. So I've got amazing information, but I think there's so much more to tell. And to be honest, if you'd given me a survey like that, I couldn't be bothered, because like some women went to so much effort of just writing all their experiences. And I'm like, there's a lot of women who would have looked, and I think there were women who were like, no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. So I am working with my critical friend just in terms of how we take forward more of a focus group thing with a embarrassing, but a video to show the women who I am, for they can get to sort of see me and think, do I want to tell her my story or do I not? And then we can pull out a little bit more of that stuff. So that's and like listening to the right people. We're really good at shutting down angry people. And I think, like, you know, anger is where it's at. So I'm a big fan of anger and like rage, and that, like, you know, let's let people channel it and help them get that out. So let's listen to those people that are shouting, that we look at as challenging, because they're the ones with the roughest stories. They're the ones that are, you know, being by agencies because they're difficult or whatever it might be. So what is on my to-do list just now? There's a children's lived experience exercise underway, again with the wonderful Women's Aid, and that's going to inform a practice session about working with children. Like I said, I'm doing that lived experience in planning for the next one, an alternative format. And one of the things that was mentioned before is frontline and management living experience. We need to start thinking about that. We need to start asking people, because it's having a real impact on people when they've been through that, and you're asking them to do stuff. And so we've got a lot of work to do in terms of that. So did I keep to 10 minutes?